Let's get a little more analysis now. Michael Kugelman is the Deputy Director of the Asia Programme at research group the Wilson Center, and he joins us now from Washington, D.C. Good to speak to you, Michael. So, early results suggest Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina will win a landslide victory. Is that a sign of the success she's had over the last decade?
Well, it depends on whose side you're on. Certainly her supporters would argue that she's brought tremendous economic successes to Bangladesh and that she's been able to do away with some very serious extremist violence that's afflicted Bangladesh over the last few years. But certainly her opponents and many human rights activists and other observers around the world would say that even though her party has strong constituencies, it doesn't have constituencies strong enough to have this very lopsided result that we're seeing, where the Awami League appears to have won a vast majority of the seats. So I think that the opposition, which did contest this election despite facing extensive crackdowns over the last few years, is really not going to accept it. And it's already announced that it's not going to accept the results. I think that the stage is set, unfortunately, for some type of confrontation. So I think the next few days will be quite tense in Bangladesh. So,
as you said, tense. There have been reports of violence and even killings, but Awami League members insist the election has been peaceful. How much of an impact has this had?
Well, I mean, certainly there has been a fair amount of violence, as your reporter said earlier. Unfortunately, this is not new in Bangladesh. But I think what's so worrying this time around is that you had several years, and particularly several months, in which the ruling party did crack down, including the use of violence, arrests of members of the opposition parties. And I think that that's really the concern, that the opposition faced so many crackdowns that they could engage in reprisals and retaliatory actions now that the result is in, and it's not a result that the opposition will support by any means. So it really is a bit of a difficult period right now.
So, I mean, all parties contested this election in contrast with 2014 when the leading opposition party boycotted. Is this a step, though, in the right direction for Bangladesh?
Well, absolutely. Theoretically, this should be seen as a free and fair election in that you did have the opposition participate, unlike in the last election. But unfortunately, the fact that the opposition did contest this election, I think, will make the opposition and its supporters even more unhappy at the results. The fact that even though it was facing extensive crackdowns, that it did keep participating. It didn't give in, even though the opposition leader, Khalida Zia, has been in prison for quite some time now. The opposition continued to campaign, or tried to campaign. So yes, one could argue that this election may be theoretically something more closely approximating a democratic process. But again, the fact that you had so many disturbing pre-election issues, such as these extensive crackdowns on the opposition, and given that you had these results that appear to show that the ruling party has won a very strong majority of the votes, a suspiciously strong majority of the votes, I think that's going to cast a lot of doubts on the idea that this really was indeed a democratic election that was free and fair.
Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you very much for joining us here on TRT World, Michael Kugelman.